something else in front of me.
Yeah, no, you're
So I've got 4.
oh, good, perfect. It's like that doesn't make any sense.
So I imagine it to be.
Party animal. And Ron left me and I was like, no, that's the other night. And then I went, we had fun dancing, but we were all talking about how much fun we had.
Is it okay if I just go leave on this?
Yeah, it's okay.
Alright, did you make it? Do my best not to do
Yes, I remember. Yes, now I know where you did. Because now I yeah, I thought there was a art joke was well, maybe we can get on because I'm going to go get my save that found and then I start waiting. someone. Somebody's someone we know. That's her name. She looks familiar, right? We are.
We are live. It says
Oops, I'm sorry.
microphones are all up there, so okay.
Well, so my lower third's working.
Huh?
My lower third's didn't work.
You didn't give me one that was generic.
The one I said one was with the title. That wasn't.
All I have in advance.
Font didn't work.
Oh, well, that's because this is on top.
Well, you said it was the title. Well, that's fine. I mean, I'm sorry. I thought I got it maybe.
Nope.
Well, it was a separate email.
Set up.
Well, I don't know if you want to help me introduce these because.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to give you, I am co-hosting this event with Women in Film with my partner here, Udi Mulio. We are the co-founders and directors of 6R, which is, we have our offices over here, and that stands for Simulated Immersive Experimental Realities. And we were also one of the ones doing the demos in the other room. So we'd love to talk to you more about that, anybody who is had an interest in this. But if Booty, introduce Booty for a moment, we'd like to talk about how happy we are to have everybody here.
Exactly, so that's why I want to start with thank you for coming. This is a really wonderful event that we are sponsoring, and then especially this space that we have, Lillard Promotion has been generous enough to give us this space so that we can meet and experience VR. Right now, I think Diana has been like putting a lot of heart into like having you guys here. Actually, she wants to have more women in VR, actually. So thank you, Diana, and thank you, Virginia, for having us.
Laura G, President.
Coming and then showing, show us how to do it and how to adapt this film. Thank you so much. And yeah.
Well, and I will turn it over to our moderator, Amy Lillard of Washington Filmworks.
Well, thank you. I feel like I've got my back to y'all over here. I'm going to turn this way maybe. But for those of you that don't know, I'm Amy Lillard. I run an organization called Washington Filmworks, which is the production incentive program and the official state film office. I have to say, I'm so grateful to be here because I have been doing this job for over a decade. And I think that people forget about me because I've been around so long. And so I actually love this part. I love having conversations with filmmakers. It's the thing that has kept me engaged in this job for so many years. And I never get to moderate anymore. I'm very happy to be here. But in talking about tonight's panel, there's a couple of topics, and y'all are probably looking like a whole page and stuff. Things that we definitely want to cover. You know, one of the topics of the conversation is how do we move from traditional filmmaking techniques into this 360 world? And then secondarily, what are the opportunities in this space that don't exist in other traditional media, right? So I'm hoping for an interesting conversation and discussion. But before we get started, just quickly, like, who's had a headset on in the room before? Who's had that experience before? Who's actually filmed in 360 before? Like, worked on a 360 film, a virtual reality film?
Cool.
Yeah, okay. And what about a traditional film, like a short film, a feature film, anything like that? Okay, good. So we're going to talk for about 45 minutes or so. And then we're going to open up for conversations for you guys, because this is about you guys getting what you need. But I'm going to go ahead and start by asking these ladies to introduce themselves and to tell us what you do in filmmaking and this.
Oh, no.
No. I tried to be smooth about that. I was like, how about over there? Hi, I'm Dacia Saenz. My background is in traditional filmmaking. I was in the filmmaking community in Austin, Texas. I did some shows for PBS and some other film work, and then I moved up here and started my own production company, very like running, gunning, making like outreach videos for nonprofits and doing content creation, more for like marketing and communication in this new landscape of like digital media and telling authentic stories versus like non-authentic cheesy stories. And then I had the great fortune of being asked to come work on at Adobe to help develop a motion graphics app. I'm very passionate about people being creative and having tools that are more accessible, and I'm really, really passionate about motion graphics, and After Effects is not necessarily the friendliest tool right at the beginning. So as my youth media educator hat kind of played a role in that, I got to come and play in this space, but they put that on hold, which it's like a breakup I didn't want to go through, like I'm still like emo singing Phil Collins songs to it. So now I work on the After Effects team. So I'm on the After Effects team and I'm trying to get, I'm the voice that's like, but you don't start Super Mario at level 8, you start at level 1. So how can we help people experience some of the magic of being a wizard in After Effects? And that's what I spent some time doing. And then I met Lacey started getting the VR bug and 360 bug, and Lacey invited me to have the opportunity to direct my first 360 film, and I've been now navigating that space of creativity for the last year or so, and it's been really liberating and really revitalizing the creativity. And since there are no rules, it's really exciting to be able to just play, and the expectation is it's cool to fail. Nobody knows what's happening, so it's been really fun. Yeah.
I'm Lacey Leavitt. I'm a producer who's been working primarily in independent feature films for the last, a decade or so. And here in Seattle, been staying and living and working here as much as possible. And then about a year and a half ago, I got really excited about 360 and VR. I started a company called Mechanical Dreams. We're also here in CoMotion. Have a really great startup incubator space here. And during that time, I've been able to work with amazing 360 filmmakers like Tracy Rector and Joe Jacobs and Dacia Saenz and Tjirongo. That's my segue.
Hi, my name is Tjirongo. I am a filmmaker, writer-director, and I did not start out that way. I was actually an actress all the way up until college, where I realized that the things that I wanted to do hadn't been written yet. And so I went to college for creative writing as a means to do that. And I've always been obsessed with film, and there was at some point in college where I was starting to do film theory, and I started to realize this, as I went further into critical feminist theory and critical black film theory, that I needed to create these things that I wanted to see, and it needed to be a full process. So after I graduated, I came out to Seattle, and I started doing classes up north because I had done film theory, but I hadn't actually gotten to practice actually working with technology and cameras and all that good stuff. And while I was there, I worked on a set for a lovely little adult film short called Mops, and that's where I had the ability to meet Lacey and Misha, and I at some point mentioned that I was working on a project that was a documentary, and a couple of months later when Mechanical Dreams happened, they suggested that I make it a virtual reality short, and that's where I'm at, so yeah.
So just along the same lines of getting acquainted, you all clearly feel passionately about the VR space and the 360 space, but like, tell us what the aha moment was when you're like, oh, I gotta do this. I gotta work in this space. Like, what was it for you? What moment was it?
So for me, it was sort of a process. The first, my husband actually works in the video game industry, so I knew that VR was coming, but I was like, oh, that's nice. Like, it's not going to be for me, because of course I'm a filmmaker, and that's video games, that's different. But I watched the Chris Milk TED Talk about VR being the ultimate empathy machine, and that was the first thing that made me be like, oh, that seems really interesting. And in that, I'm sure most people have known about it, but in that he also details how he made a documentary about a girl who was at a UN Syrian refugee camp, and then showed that documentary to the UN delegation that was going to vote on funding for that camp. And obviously that had an amazing, powerful, immediate effect and call to action. So I was like, oh, this is something that has real, beautiful cinematic storytelling ability, so let me check that out. So then I got a cardboard. The very first thing I watched was Bjork's first music video, where she's on the beach and does multiple versions of herself, and then I just started just diving into it, and I was like, this is going to be what we're going to do, and the regular platforms too, but also this. So that's what got me really excited.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it was Bono staring into my eyes. My first experience was Nick was like, hey, have you checked this out? And he had a Google Cardboard, and he showed, I was a huge U2 fan, and they made this 360 video where it opens up and you're in the center of a stage of an empty stadium, like, so whoa, this is what it feels like to be a rock star. And then kind of a sound cued me to turn around, and there was Bono, and I was like, oh, hey. My friend Sarah, we went to see him, and she was not a fan until the show. Now she's really a fan, and she was like, it's like Prince and Robin Williams had a baby. He was so sexy, and now it's like all I can think of. So I was like, oh, hi Bono, who I've been a fan of since I was very tiny. And then the Edge is there, and he's singing to me, and it's like they're staring into my soul, singing it's like a dream come true. And then suddenly I keep, keep getting cued to turn and explore the space, and suddenly it's like, there's a mariachi, all female mariachi band interpreting the song, and then there's like a young girl with just like her Casio in her room, and I just loved that, like, through the same song I was hearing and seeing and being transported to all these different places, and that there was like a discovery process in that, and that felt very powerful to me, and now, I just like, dove in after that.
I think that for me, virtual reality I perceived it in a way that was more of a mechanical, almost like Black Mirror, like I'm terrified of this thing. And, I thought about the ideas of innovation happening in video games and specifically in pornography, and it always made me feel trepidatious about getting into the industry myself. But I got to have the chance to work on Tracy Rector's Eagle Bone, and it was such a magical experience because it was authentically her talking about her own culture and her own people, and actually being a part of that set and seeing it happen and then watching it manifest in the actual headset was a magical moment. And I thought, wow, there's so much more that we can do, and we are right at the forefront, and there's so much, like, I thought about just the idea of everything that I've learned about film, has been from the perspective of, like, these are these white men that have made all of these these amazing leaps in creativity, but like only these white men were allowed to do this.
And this is how they decided it's done.
And that's why we
do it this way. Right.
And I was always just so confused in classes, because I was like, this doesn't seem right, you know? And I'm so excited about the idea of actually doing what we want and not having any rules and just creating. And there is no limit right now. It's just endlessly creating upon creating upon creating. And I'm excited about that.
I kind of want to go back to the comment that you just made about your personal experience about being on the set of Eaglebone, and that that likely was not your first opportunity to be on set, because I know MOPS was before that, I believe. At least, and I'm sure there were many others. But can you articulate what that difference was for you?
Oh, yeah. Very fundamentally. I walk on set and people are like, are you the talent? You must be the actress, right? And I'm like, no, I'm just working on set. Please don't make this more awkward than it already is. I know I'm the only black person here, but I'll just be doing this job over here. And there's a bunch of dudes and me, and I'm just like, oh, God. And it's so uncomfortable. Like, every part of it, like, I love film and I love doing this, and yet it's such a mental, what's a good way of not cursing? It's difficult because it's like you're on a set and it's like subtly people are like, you should not be here, but you know that you need to be here because it's important, and this is the only way that you can go further, and you need to be friendly to all these people so they will like you when they hire you again. And it feels like you have to go home and like watch an Oprah special or something, and just like cuddle and just like eat chocolate and stuff. Like, it's just like you almost need to decompress from that. And I never needed to do, like, on Eaglebone, I just showed up and I was just so happy and thankful that everything was happening and it wasn't being weirdly manufactured, you know, as I've seen happen before. It was just an authentic experience that we got to enjoy, and it was literally like peeking into something that we were allowed to. We weren't. I think the idea on sets I've been on is that, like, we have all rights to everything because that's just the way it is. And I love that it was like, we have permission to be here, and this is the experience we're getting. That's what I loved about it.
One of the very things that I love about being the film commissioner in Washington is the fact that women specifically are some of the leaders in the community here. Some of our most nationally recognized filmmakers are women here, not to say any discount for the men in the room, but I think that's very unique, especially as we discuss Hollywood, right, generally, having been a Hollywood person before. So I want to kind of take a turn a little bit and kind of set the stage. Like, Lacey, can you spend just like 2 minutes? What is virtual reality versus augmented reality? Is virtual reality the same as 360? Spend a little time defining the space for us.
So it depends on who you're talking to. I have been using VR filmmaking or VR cinematic VR as a synonym for 360 video, because I think, especially in rooms where some people are just learning about it for the first time, I don't think that differentiation needs to happen. But some people do want to differentiate between regular 360 video and VR. So 360 video, so there's this little white camera, little white ball that's getting all of us right now. The 360 video is, of course, when you have multiple cameras capturing in a 360 globe, and then you take that footage and you put it back on the globe and you watch it in a headset. Virtual reality is also in 360 space. Some people like to only use virtual reality when you're also able to be interactive within that. So for room scale VR, that's like Oculus Rift or the HTC Vive, where you're able to actually walk around within a usually 20 by 22.
And does that mean does that by definition mean room scale is when you're walking around?
Room scale is you're able to actually walk around within that virtual space. Since the Samsung Gear headset has come out and Google Cardboard have come out, they've sort of been branding that as VR too, and those are what most people have. Like, most people have either a Cardboard or Samsung Gear. Millions of people have those. Hundreds of thousands of people have the room scale set up. So I think we can just all VR right now. I think that's what I'm going to do. And then augmented reality, that's when you're taking, you know, animation or video and putting that onto, you know, a screen where you can look out into the real world. So like Pokemon Go on your camera, you see the street and you see a Pokemon on it. That's augmented reality.
Okay.
Google Glass was augmented reality, and the Microsoft HoloLens is augmented reality.
And what is XR?
XR is the catch-all phrase for all of it, and that's easy. Pixvana apparently coined that phrase. I've been using it, but locals coined that phrase. I've been using it. I didn't realize it was free in the locals. But yeah, so XR is what we call just all of the experiential realities. Mixed reality is something that's also being used. That used to sort of mean, you know, where you have a combination of real life, you know, like Disneyland, for example, you're having a virtual reality experience, but there's also actors and stuff around you. Now, Microsoft's calling everything mixed reality, but I thought that was just augmented reality.
It's really just augmented reality.
It's really just augmented reality. So let's just say XR and that catches all of it.
Yeah.
It's such a good anecdote, really, because the space is so new. It's all evolving so quickly, right?
Yeah.
So what we define as XR, VR, AR, right, at any time seems to have changed, like, regularly.
Yeah. Like a year ago, there were fights about 360 versus VR, and now no one's fighting about it anymore.
And I don't think we had XR last year.
No.
Also, I mean, the cool thing about 360, things are starting to, hybrids are now possible. And, you know, something like, so if you have Google Cardboard on one end of the spectrum where you just, you know, you put this little $20 plastic and cardboard, put your phone in it, and you too can have Bono stare into your eyes. And then on the other end, you know, you've got Google Tilt Rush and a Vive and Oculus where you're literally creating things. In the middle, you've got the gear, which is kind of cool because it allows you to put your phone in still, but it also has interactive elements. And so there are some really cool, like, pieces now that are cinematic, you know, pieces that are complementary to a documentary. For Notes on Blindness is one of my favorite in this regard, where, you know, you have a traditional documentary and then they created a world to sort of help tell that story in a more experiential way. And it looks like you're just in a 360 video, like I'm, you know, in this world, and then suddenly you have an opportunity to actually affect the space that you're in. So it's sort of a mix of the two, and so I think as we're moving in that direction, really.
And that's 360, like right now in 360 video, there's been very few opportunities to have regular 360 video be room scale or be interactive, but
that's changing, right? So yeah.
Peggy.
Yeah. So a passive experience means that I can watch what's happening and I can move around in the room, like I can physically move, but nothing, I'm still in the center of the beach ball. I can choose where I look, but I'm passively watching it the way that I would watch a movie. I can choose to look at this part of the screen or that part of the screen, or focus on the foreground or the background. As I move, like, I don't move in relation to the characters in the piece. Having an active experience or being able to affect the space means I have, you know, most traditionally, you know, I have controls and I can move something, or as I move, things move in relation to it. But in a more like subtle way, it could mean, as we start to create hybrid immersive stories, that when I look this way, that a sound is triggered or a new plot line is triggered. And if I were to look this way, a different plot point, you know, the stories might be branched. And so I'm affecting, whether I'm aware of it or not, I'm sort of changing the way that the story is told. Whereas in a passive experience, it's edited, it's done, there's nothing that I can physically or, you know, I can't do anything to change the outcome of the experience aside from choosing where I look and doing it again and seeing something I might have missed. So
I think, you know, one of the good takeaways from what just happened up here is that it's a constantly evolving space, and they're swapping wines up here, and there's never a bad time to jump in, right? Everyone is learning in the space consistently and all the time. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, if you're in a 360 world or in a virtual reality world, and that's what we'll call it for this conversation for easy, everything is different, right? You know, you as an audience member can look all around and you see everything. how does that affect and impact what you do on the set? What are some of the opportunities? Number one, we'll go there, and challenges number two. But let's start with what are the opportunities when you have a 360 environment in front of you? What are some of the positives of that experience from a filmmaking standpoint, from the nuts and bolts part?
I mean, I think hands down why I'm so in love with this is because it is, we are such a like soundbite, headlines, scroll, multitask sort of culture that this for like when you're in a headset, whether it doesn't matter, when you have something stuck to your face, you can't also be looking at your phone and texting and checking Facebook and getting all your, you know, like your phone is in there, so you can't have your phone. So, you know, it's like the ability to flex this muscle, to force someone to flex the muscle of observation, because when you get kind of, you go into your immediate reactions, kind of like orient yourself. And to be, to be present with whatever content is in front of you, and that is a very powerful thing to have as a content creator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of those things. But then, you know, like one of the first room scale experiences I had was one of the early demos. I can't remember the rest of the must have been Vibe because it was a Valve demo, and it was you're in the same like environment.
The Vive being a headset, right? The Vive
so
being a headset.
the headset. And I was in a office room with carpet just like this one, and it was a portal like world, and you're standing on this little platform, and below you it looks like there's a 6-foot drop, and the whole goal of this first experience is to just step off the platform, and it's so ridiculous. I don't know. I'm on this, but it's not even like a cliff. It's like a 6-foot drop. Like even if I did fall, like it would be fine. I could plan it. Like it would be fine. But it was just so, I was laughing. I was like, I couldn't get over how I could not get my foot to physically move. I was like, no, it's ridiculous. And then like counting, like I feel the carpet. It's not that platform. Not gonna do it. Like I couldn't get my body to do it. And there's something just really, really powerful about as a viewer feeling like you're truly in the world. Even more so, like, you know, I'm sure this will come up later. I don't think Black Cinema is going anywhere. Black Cinema is amazing, but there's just something so visceral about feeling like you're in a completely other world.
Absolutely. I think that it's just an experience in which you get to tell the entire story. There isn't just one plane. It's like theater, but cinematic.
Yeah.
And it's just more opportunities to excel in different ways, or to have people experience things in different moments. And say someone has an experience of a story here, someone else has an experience of a story here. And those could be radically different, and that's how we go through the world, so in a way that's more honest. Say you're having a conversation between two people, but you decide to focus on this person, and someone else focuses on this person, or if it's like a dinner party, and you have the ability to watch every performer, you know. You can have a completely radically different experience from the point of view of everyone. And, for example, there's Potato Dreams, where there's multiple stories happening, and above there's another story playing out in a way. And some people don't even notice that there's something above, but it gives context to the entire experience. And it changes throughout. And something like that is definitely, you want to keep on watching. You want to keep on looking further and delving deeper. It's a literal different experience each time, as opposed to, I mean, we all grew up in cinema. And I love experiencing different movies, or the same movie and coming back year after year. But the idea of coming back moment after moment and having something different is...
To be motivated to watch it again repeatedly, because I might focus on something different and just get it. So
let's talk about that. Let's talk about that technique, right? If you have something going on here and here and here and here, how do you do that? I mean, like, honestly, though, like from, you know, the filmmakers here, it's like it's right in front of you. This is the action. But how do you orchestrate that? And like, what are the things that we need to know to make that happen? from a technique and filmmaking standpoint?
I can't say what the rules are because we're making it up. That's what's so exciting. Yeah, and it's funny because, you know, on all films that you make, or at least all films that I make, like, you take it, you show it to people and you get feedback. Like, you know, it's working for you, do you understand the story, like, blah, blah, blah. And even though this was very frankly, we did the, you know, it's still important to, you know, have people give feedback on the cut and what's going on. Sometimes that was interesting. Sometimes I was looking at it for the first time and looking at it for the first time. That was trick. But with Potato specifically, you know, it's the same narration. It's the filmmaker Wes Early was talking about his childhood growing up in Russia and, you know, the mom trying to immigrate to the United States. But we're showing these different, like, basically different memories of his from the same time. So in front of you, you might have one thing, and then over here you might have another, and over here you might have a third. Sometimes it's the same thing all around. Sometimes you have one thing here, a beef thing here, and the A thing back behind you again. So some people love that and want to just watch multiple times. Some other people were like freaked out. They're like, I did everything with the arrow. They're like, oh, I'm making myself dizzy, and you just kind of go with it. So
Did you film them from a technique standpoint? They clearly weren't happening all at the same time, right?
no, yeah. So well, and that one's interesting because we didn't even shoot that with a 360 camera. We shot that with like regular, you know, we shot with the Alexa and Mira, and then composited it in Premiere in 360. So that's, you don't even need a 360 camera if you make a 360 film, right? You can play around with it if you have a Premiere and some plugins.
Yeah.
But we definitely, what I've noticed is it definitely requires, from a practical technique perspective, like not only do you want to think about everything in the frame, where there is a frame, but everything in the 360 sphere, but then you want to plan for it. So whereas, you know, not every indie filmmaker uses storyboard, every film that we're doing, no matter how indie it is storyboarding. It's as important as like the Hollywood big budget film, I think. And then we also...
Why? Why is it so important?
Because being intentional about...
Because you're a story designer.
Yeah.
You're designing an experience.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you think? Like, it's a little bit, it's so much, you know, like live theater's been doing this forever. And I think, honestly, like, I think as humans who love stories, that's an innate thing we do. Like, we want to follow the story. Like, your curiosity, you're like, you want to know what happens next. But I also think there's something really cool about this space to be able to, like, plant like little Easter eggs for people that are a little more rebellious. And they're like, well, I see you want me to go that way, but I want to go this way, or I've already done it that way. And so one of the things that is a really cool filmmaker, the indie filmmaker from back in the 90s, Rose Feroce, you know, she did Go Fish and then worked on 6 Feet Under and Outward, and she's really been doing a lot of cool stuff in 360. And she thinks about thinking about this, how you think of a filming in 360 space as architecture. Like, how are you designing different, like, spaces for people to engage in? And with that in mind, like, I had a really cool opportunity to work on this piece that local choreographer Katie Niehoff put together, and was invited to create a 360 piece for her interactive dance. It was like a docu-dance piece. It was awesome.
It was amazing.
And I got to film an astronaut. And I can't go to space. And I didn't want to do something underwater. And so one of the things that the astronaut really focused on was like, you know, we think about going to space as like, oh my God, being free and floating and it's all magical. And she's like, getting there is fucking hell. Like, it is really hard on your body. You go to, like, the transitions are hard. And I loved that idea. So I wanted to film her somewhere in the middle, in between. So we went like all the way up to Rattlesnake Lake and filmed on the edge of this cliffside. Like, our DP was like literally hanging, sitting under a rock on an edge, and everybody was really freaked out. And he was like, it's cool, I'm fine. Maybe he's a rock climber, I don't know. But, you know, it was this, you know, in designing the space almost, thinking about it that way, if you want to, when I was thinking about it, I was like, if you want to engage with this astronaut that's really direct address, I want you to be able to do that, but and be able to look up and feel like you're so far above because you can see all these valleys and lakes far beyond. But then also there's this like intense drop, and like I wanted people to feel like in their gut, like uncomfortable, because that's what she was talking about, right? And so for those people, you know, I try to like, not only it being the like discomfort of that drop, but also I put like some animations in there to try to like, I don't know, reward you for looking away from what was most comfortable. And so that's an interesting way, I think, to think about it. Like architecture and design feel
And you
really
see
important.
everything, right? That's the other.
Yeah.
So what's interesting, though, is we keep talking about these specific types of content, right? And as we got acquainted before the panel, you talked a lot about being a lover of cinema and seeing every film and all these films, right? But what's interesting to me from just from someone who's kind of tracking the space, is that we're really seeing virtual reality in nonfiction television, nonfiction, and video games, of course. Why is cinematic VR, narrative VR, from what I'm seeing anyway, it's my editorial comments, but why is it taking longer to catch up, right? So what do you think, having been like a cinema study, well, not a major, I realize it was minor, but what does that mean? Like, what do you think the difference is between flat cinema, flat, is that what we call it? Is that disrespectful? Flat, and, the VR, why is it taking longer?
For specifically?
For narrative to catch on, right? So you see lots of...
Right.
Yeah.
I think that we're used to something, and it's very terrifying to have something that is completely brand new and is changing on a rapid basis, and is almost seemingly disconnected from the way that we make things creatively. I was always very worried about not knowing enough. There's very much tech-centric aspects of it, and I think that it can be intimidating to just be like, oh, I like making stories, and just like come into that room and demand a place at the table, It's uncomfortable, and there are not enough people that have made mistakes before us to be able to be like, oh, this is what we should do, this is what we shouldn't do. Like, we are those people, and that's intimidating. It's scary.
Or empowering? Is it empowering a little bit?
It is. It's empowering in the same sense that there has to be some fear in things that are empowering, right? Mm-hmm. We learn through pain. We don't learn through comfort. But it's exciting because once you get past the terror, as I was definitely terrified when this idea was first proposed to me, because I had no context of this. I've done all of this cinema stuff. Like, I've done all this film theory. I don't understand how this makes sense in this concept. Like, there's nothing before this. Who can I read that'll explain this to me? And, like, what's the best way to do this? And, there's no best way. There's nothing.
Turn it down.
But at some point you get so scared that there is no more terror. and at that point I was just like, I just have to do this. And I just have to make a weird storyboard in which I draw like stick figures in a circle, and it's just getting done. And that's all you have to do. There's no way you can really make a mistake because you've never done this before. Like, it hasn't been done before. Whatever idea you have, it's probably never happened. So why not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's not a lot of things that you can do creatively that's actually true of. Even making like derivative works in the space, though, it's like, still hasn't been done in this space. It might not work, and people are like, cool, like, I still liked it because I learned this from it. And it's like adding to the conversation, and that's super important. And that feels really cool. Like, that's not really true of a lot of creative.
It's interesting that in preparing for this conversation, I was reading a bunch of articles, and I actually wrote a question about it because the word profound, right? I read 7 articles, and profound was in 5 of them, right? So this is a profound medium. And, like, why is that? What does that mean to you, right? There's a lot of talk around empathy and the power. So, like, this is shifting our conversation more into what is the power behind VR and this medium. What does that mean? Why is it so profound? And what does that mean to you as filmmakers? Ooh, I stumped him.
For me, it's definitely you can't, whether it's through our phone or whether through just sort of like with the frame. I think as immersive as regular flat cinema can be, you're always conscious of the fact that there's a frame. Even when someone breaks the fourth wall and talks through the frame, the Cairo style, it's like we're very aware that like this is my world and that is what's the story, and there's a very distinct separation there. And it's a profound experience when all of a sudden with a silly, stupid, heavy thing that's going to get less heavy in the future, you can't move your leg on the carpet because you think you're going to fall and you're not going to fall. And with that, I've seen a lot of documentaries of Syrian refugees and other refugees and refugee camps and like how terrible those missions are, but it is a different feeling when you feel like you are actually standing in the middle of one of those tents. It's a very different feeling when you are on a drone flying through Angel Falls as opposed to like watching, like, oh, I feel like I'm literally floating right now. You have a visceral, physical, sometimes you get sweaty, sometimes you get nervous, like you have an actual physical reaction in a way that you don't in regular cinema. So for me, that's the difference. Like your senses, your brain is very powerful, and your brain gets tricked by the art and thinking that you're actually in a place. And so that's what makes those experiences so profound for me. For better and for worse. Can I get into it?
I mean, yeah. Starting from, I guess, how we used to view cinema, like we'd walk into the movie theater, the lights would go down, there would be a hush, we'd see something, and then we'd exist there together for an hour or two, and we'd all leave with that general experience that we kind of had, and that was it. We'd have a television at home, and then the television would be off, but that's not how we interact with the world now. And because of that, we need to almost be submerged in something, just trapped within it, in order for us to really acknowledge what's happening around us. Because there are times when I don't want to acknowledge what I'm looking at, and I need to disengage with it. And there are times when I actually want to feel comforted by something, and I don't feel it because it's two-dimensional and it's not really real, and the world is still terrible. Right? And I do think that we have this ability to have these warm moments of honesty and like clandestine interaction and all of these things that make it so wonderful to interact with one another on a regular basis. And it can be done through virtual headsets. And there are people who don't have the ability to be around other people, or who have things that limit them from being around. And the idea that they can also experience that is amazing. I mean, it can be a tool for healing. It can be a tool for change. It can be a tool for understanding. And that's what I think is so great.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the empathy machine thing, people are starting to challenge a little bit more, and I'm really appreciative of it because I did a lot of social justice style documentaries. I worked at the Center for Human Rights at UW, and I made a documentary in Thailand called The Cost of Gender about like trans folks who go abroad to have access to healthcare in ways that they can't here, and I just felt really weird about the same kind of content in an immersive space. Just this idea of like, cool, we're going to go see this war zone, and then, because the New York Times sent me this thing on Sunday, and then, hey, mimosas for brunch, like you didn't, and I've read these quotes where people like, yeah, I mean, I really felt like I was homeless, and it's like, no, but you didn't, I mean, you got to step in someone's shoes, but like you didn't actually, like you are not feeling the consequences of the thing that you think you just experienced. And so I think it's very important the way that like with anthropological studies first started and people took cameras into spaces to really just like otherize things, people, like that is, I think there's a way to do it that way, and that's not cool. But there are people doing really amazing stories. There's another piece that really changed my mind on it, I think because they focused on like the story focal point was a person in this space who was really activating change and was a person of strength. It was this woman who had, the only person who's ever survived Ebola, and clouds over Sidra, and she is able to actually provide human touch to people who are kids and people who are dying of Ebola and who are just surrounded by people in these radioactive suits. Like, she can actually be a human connection in a way that no one else can, and that was really powerful because it was her story of survival seen through her eyes. It didn't feel exploitive. It didn't feel like poverty porn or tragedy porn, anyways. So I think that's really, really stellar. And then I think, like, over the weekend, I saw After Solitary, which was a piece that was created by it was a frontline episode on like solitary confinement and psychological effects on prisoners, just like inhumane psychological effects, and was produced with Nonito La Pena's team, who's done a lot of like journalistic VR experiences where you do have the ability to walk in and around and you feel like you're in that space. And it gave me this thought that I feel like there are a lot of things that happen in our modern society that happen in a black box, that happen outside of our consciousness, and so it's real easy for us to just be like, la la la, it's not happening, and there's a lot of infection there. And so I feel like this tool really, like, to me, feels like an opportunity to shed light into those spaces, you know, to be able to feel what it's like to be in a cell that size, and to have this person who experienced solitary confinement for 5 years explain what, like, standing there, talking about his story, and like being able to move around the space and really feel confined for 8 minutes of what, I mean, that was profound, and that felt like something that I would want every person who's in Congress or a lawmaker, a policymaker to experience. And it felt like this opportunity to say, like, here's the stuff that happens behind closed doors, and here's how we connect dots. And I think that's a really powerful thing. How do we connect the dots between where I'm standing and where that situation is happening, so that we can, like, actually do something about shifting this reality.
So since we are at a Women in Film event, there's a lot of discussion happening in the space about breaking down. Well, you know what? Like, why don't we use this opportunity to talk about Mechanical Dreams and your perspective on various voices, right? That's I think an interesting way to start the conversation. Why that's working for you?
Yeah, well, you know, obviously there's a lot of discussion in traditional film right now about, you know, the fact that a very specific set of people, white men, have been making, you know, feature films for a very long time, and of course there's nothing wrong with white men making feature films, it's just they shouldn't be doing them. And so, you know, obviously Wonder Woman was an achievement, Moonlight was an achievement, like we've had lots of, you know, achievements, but this is after 125 years of the industry growing. So here we are in 2017 going, oh, something's wrong here, we should probably work on changing that. And we are having that conversation, that's a great conversation to have. But, you know, VR is new. So maybe we don't have to wait 125 years and then go, oh, shoot, we should change things, so things really should be different. Maybe we could just be inclusive from the beginning. I obviously have a vested interest in that. But one of the things, you know, to Dr. what she was just saying, you know, as we were forming this company, as we were thinking about, like, what are the stories we want to tell, because truly we do have these, you know, immediate impacts. We're not only doing social justice documentaries, but that is definitely, like, something that we want to do. But even with our narrative experiences, we just want to be conscientious from the get-go of, like, okay, who are the people who are telling stories? Because traditionally, whether it's been men or women, traditionally anyone who's telling a story about anything, that person's been white. And I think that even in Seattle, which is so female-centric, we're also very, very white in terms of who's actually creating the media and, like, who are we allowing to tell the stories. So for me, like, my first idea I ever had for a film in VR was to experience pride. And I was like, I'm going to sing because it's going to be so great, and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, I'm a straight white lady, and I'm very confused. So it occurred to me that this is the best one to direct this project. Maybe after that, I'm not. And that's, I think, just a way of, that's just something that's really important to me. Like, why not, since we're here, since 2017, since we're all learning so much more about what's going on, like, maybe when I'm putting all this time and energy into empowering filmmakers to tell stories, that it should be lots of different filmmakers.
Do you find that globally across the board in this space? I mean, I know I'm asking is there more opportunity in the space outside of Seattle and otherwise?
It's really interesting. VR is a tech industry. It's like tech piece entertainment. And I knew that numbers were bad in tech because they were in film. I didn't realize they were actually worse. I didn't realize until a couple weeks ago that only 2% of venture capital goes to female-founded companies. That was a fun statistic to learn. My entire boss. That's a horrific number. That's worse than Hollywood female director numbers. That's bad.
Which is what, 3%?
Which is, I think, like 3, 4%. Next year's number is going to be super skewed because one of them is
Totally.
like, well, one, that's probably, I don't know, 8% at that point. Yeah. So it's pretty bad. But that said, again, because it's a new industry and it is coming from, massive and fat companies, but it's all about the 2017 where this is a nationwide, I don't know if it's a global wide it's trying to be, but it's a nationwide conversation that people are having about, hey, look, we've noticed that, things are really inequitable, and we should work on changing that. Obviously, some political things are happening, and people are like, oh, maybe things aren't great, like, maybe things aren't, we do need to work on changing things. So I think all of these things are building to this could be better. Like, we could actually do better. They're not super sending anything right now, but it's also so new that I feel like anybody can jump up their sleeves and change things. So that's what I'm doing.
That seems like a lovely opportunity to pause and invite you guys to ask some questions.
I like that stuff.
Come on. I have a question, and that is, cinema is a language, film is a language, and it's developed for very specific things, the cut, the juxtaposition of shots, the rhythm of editing. What would be the translation, or is there one yet, of some of those things in VR, or what would be some examples that we could look at that have been done in this new language or developed in this new language? And I understand choreography might be part of it, but how do you see that happening? Translating what's worked, to bring you into a character, to make you empathize with the character.
One of my favorite examples of something that could be done in cinematic VR experience that cannot be done in Flatties, it was like, this is a verb of this new language, was a piece called Invasion, which was made, it's really cute and adorable. It was made by a woman from Zynga and a person from DreamWorks got together and let's make cinematic VR. And so even though it's a passive experience, you don't affect the world, they did this really interesting thing and apparently thought about it for a long time. I'm a real nerd and I listened to a podcast called Voices of VR. Yeah. Totally just deep dive. It's so good. And it's very interdisciplinary. It's across the board everything. Anyway, so they thought about it. They were not going to do this, but it's so effective. Is that this adorable bunny, this main character, kind of hides behind you as this. I don't want to spoiler alert, right? But this character is sort of using you as part of the shield to this danger. It makes you oh, fuck, I gotta take care of this bunny. It's so cool. And I know where to go. And I don't know where to go. It was just, it just really put you in it in a way that it was awesome. And I've watched, one of my favorite things to do is to, I host kind of unofficial user tests at my house because I've got a Vive there and some stuff, and I love bringing people in and just watching their reactions. And you always know when they're going to get to that spot in the video because they're just squeals of laughter. And that's a visceral thing that you can't do in flat cinema. And so, how do you, I don't know how to reinvent that over and over again. I don't think every film needs that, but that's a very interesting thing to sort of incorporate that positioning.
That particular piece, you said you've observed this, a lot of people watch it and they react at a certain point at the same time. So is the want to call it choreography or the design such that the makers are pulling you to a certain place always, and that 99.9% of the people when they're watching this for the first time, they're going to go there and see that event?
I think if they've designed it that way. I don't think that all stories are designed that way. In that particular one, for sure. I think audio cues. This is the thing. Audio is always the like bastard stepchild of filmmaking, and it's so important, and it's even more critical in this world.
And there is so much money being like poured into this technology right now, so that if you hear something, you turn, and it's being invented here. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, ambisonic sound is, if you want, Google this. Get real nerdy about it. It's really incredible to think that, you know, a sound here versus a sound over there, to be able to like position these different cues.
A device with just headphones and a full 7-1 surround in the theater, like that's some of the stuff that's being worked on right now. That's really
Which is mind.
So sound, and I think motion, you know, and that piece is an animated piece. I think you follow, or even when you're filming something, I think designing movement and then lighting. I think Little Potato for me was a really beautiful example of how lighting was a cue. It's gorgeous.
Even something as simple as, I don't know, I was working an event and I just watched people watch Barack Obama tour them through the Great Lakes or like the national park of some kind. And you know, it's like Barack Obama is on a canoe with you. And
What?
I gotta go. Exactly. I think the one did you see the tour through the White House where he and they just released this last week. It's on, I don't know if I think it's New York Times, but yeah, it's Obama and Michelle. Through the White House.
Reality?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You go into the headset, you're like, I'm just gonna stay here for
The next 4 years.
See y'all later. Run the company well. I'm gone.
So basically, if you want to meet famous people,
Yeah.
hang out.
Other questions? Yes.
So your art seems like a very private experience. How do you create it to be a collective experience? Because from a filmmaking perspective, you want to build an audience, you want to build a piece. So if you're waiting for one person to have it, especially with like a slow entry to the experience.
That's where the technology is like evolving super fast. People are starting to design experiences where, you know, you have 40, 50 people in a headset and it's all queued up and synced up at once. Or there's a piece that's like an interactive theater piece, the guy that did the Fabulous Wonderland, right? Yeah. And then they're like, as a collective, like they're triggering certain parts of the story to some people and certain parts to another. It's yet another layer of choreography, as you said earlier. So,
And there's like arcades coming up.
yeah. And projection, dome projection might be things, but that's the big question. It is. Like, not everybody wants to, it is a, I mean, I don't know. I would argue that I think that that's the power of it. And maybe we need to spend a little time, like, with ourselves and self-reflecting. And so, I'm into it. Like, you can't escape, you know, I think that's important.
Watching something, you know, with your partner or whatever, you like that experience, you talk about it, and some images of what's happening. So, like, you only have one headset, how do you do that?
There's this wonderful LA Times. So at Cannes, as Susan was just saying, there was this an incredible VR experience, but they didn't have anywhere at any of the theaters in which they could have the experience because it's not made for that. So, you know, if you're interested in kind of thinking about this space and the way that audience interact, there was a wonderful LA Times article that ran after Cannes about this space is redefining movie making, not movie making, but movie going, and what audiences are and how they interact with each other. So, you know, again, as the recurring theme is everything is evolving. You know, the cinematic movie going experience, maybe you have a headset on, you get off, and you talk about it, right? It's just different. And the evolution. It's interesting. LA Times article.
Disneyland ride where you all go together.
Yeah.
And then you walk out and everyone's like,
Well, that's how, when you go up there, they did that with having like 40 headsets that were all queued up and played at the same time. They watched the 5 films that had been selected, 5 yard films that had been selected in a row. And then that audience got up and went to another room where the filmmakers were and could have basically informal Q&A time while then the next audience came for a watch that. That was really amazing. Way to do it. There's also a lot of video game companies are working on social VR where you know, like Facebook, for example, is a thing, and it's really great. Spaces,
Alt VR.
Alt VR, Be Real, or there's really great local companies working on this, so
You can go see Reggie Watts perform at a comedy theater in social VR with like 500 people from all around the world. You can go sing karaoke right now with someone in Japan and high-five them in VR space. I mean, it's sort of bananas in some ways.
What's happening in the video game circle, they are moving them, like the Red Watch, they're moving them into like more cinematic. So right now, couldn't tell you, but it's literally changing every day, and it's definitely something to think about.
Yes.
So traditional like flash interaction is a really good job of directing the viewer's eye to a very specific thing, whether it be a close-up or with focus or whatever. With VR, you don't really have that as much because as a viewer, I can look anywhere. When I watch VR content, I like to look like straight up, straight down, behind me, because often I don't see those spaces being utilized. And so to me, I see a lot of VR content that could be done better as 2D traditional content, just because they're not using the whole brain. What's your guys' take on that?
Yeah.
And specifically for narrative, I think there's a really big area for experiential VR where I'm going to go to the Grand Canyon or whatever, how long I'm around. That totally makes sense. But like narrative VR,
Yeah.
Totally.
Following up on that, didn't you say that you made a film that started out being, made a VR piece that started out being a film, and then you transformed it into a, but you answered this question first, but I thought that might actually lead into that.
Yeah, actually, why don't I start, and then that'll be a perfect path to you, because we did exactly that. Yeah, because, so I think you're totally dead, right, and because these are the early days of cinema, or of VR, sort of like the early days of cinema, where, you know, like the train pulled into the station and people weren't running out of the theater, they're like, oh my god, and then they're like, oh, everyone go see this new film where it's a film, and people in the station, and like, that sold tickets. And
That's so in town.
Yeah. We're going to Nickelodeon, go see the train pulling in the station. So that was like enough for the first one, right? But like quickly was no longer enough. And similar with VR, it's like, oh my gosh, first you're just like, I can look anywhere. And it's like, okay, but why? And that's really the question, I think, of all their, and also the documentary experience is like, why is it more powerful to be experiencing this in 360 than it is to just show it like this? Because this is so much easier. We know what the language is. It's so much harder to get it right in VR and 360. So anytime you're going to make an experience for 360, why are you doing it that way? And what are you bringing to the story through the experience of actually being there? Because you're right, it's so much easier to make it flat, and there's so many more tricks. It's so much easier. So many more people see it right now because everyone can watch flat and not as many people watch 360. So the question is always, why? Right. So how did you develop that as a director and making why now 360?
I think that was a difficult concept to grasp because I didn't want it to be just like now in 3D kind of like. I wanted there to be a reason. I wanted there to be levity. I wanted there to be meaning behind this. And I kind of went back to the idea of what is the story here. And for me, it's my friend who's a dominatrix, right? And I thought about what that experience must be and who we are as the viewer in this case, you know? And I thought about like everything that I had perceived about, you know, the viewer and the power that we have in this camera, and I thought, like, why don't we take that away? Why don't we make this person, this viewer, this submissive? And that way I was able to perceive what the space would be like. And using sound development and the sonic sound, it's, every time I have to talk about it, I'm just like, what is this word? But literally, like, being able to have a logical reason for it and to really capture an actual experience is necessary. So as we continue throughout the story, we have different manifestations of a character, but it makes logical sense. And we have an ability to not be logical because this is not logical. We're able to see all around us, and this is magnificent and magical and different and strange. And that can have different results, you know, like what does our mind look like? What is involved in here? And does it mean that there has to be something every time we look up? And does it have to match what's happening in the story? That's not how we think. I do think that everybody has a new perspective on what exists and all of these things. But at the same time, what sucks is that people don't want to look behind them all the time.
Well, yeah, people above 30 will just, because you got to tell them before they go in. It's so, like, everybody's just like, let me spin you around a couple times. And you know, younger people are just immediately want to explore. So I think, you know, one thing I read recently that kind of stuck with me is this idea of story discovery. And again, going back to like, you're designing a story for people to discover a story rather than telling a story. And I think that it's, you know, because it's been nascent and just like people are like trained as viewers to look forward, I think as makers, people are like, well, I'm just going to put everything right here and aren't really thinking about all those things. But just like how we got out of like non-linear storytelling. I remember when Pulp Fiction, everybody like lost their damn mind. They're like, they told a story out of order. Or like Breaking Bad, they're like, they're telling the end before we get to the beginning. This is amazing. And that took so many years. I think people are finally starting to realize like you can play with this. Like you can bend time, bend physics. And all these, like, we're starting to get there. You know, we're getting away from the train pulling out of the station. You know, here we are at the top of Everest.
By the way, hilariously, we were in Olympia this year for Film Day, and we put headsets on legislators, and that is an off-the-record cocktail conversation after.
Ooh, thanks for giving us motivation to stay there. Go ahead.
No, I just want to ask if you just talk about that a little bit more. The difference between designing a story and also experience that and telling a story.
Well, so, I mean, I'm just exploring and playing. For Experience 5, for instance, you know, the idea, like, Lacey wrote to me, I was like, hey, we want to film Pride. And, you know, I'm like, okay, well, that sounds, you know, for people who might not be able to go or people who are like, I hate gay people. Like, okay, well, here's a way for you to access this kind of space, again, that you might not be able to or won't. But I felt like it needed something a little bit more because of the canvas being a new canvas. And so, you know, we basically invited Karen Schwartz, who's the owner of Sugar Pill. She came out during, you know, when AIDS was first starting to come about and was a part of ACT UP. And, you know, it's a very different landscape for LGBTQ civil rights at that moment than, like, what I went through coming out in the 90s and what youth are experiencing coming out now, or people, you know, just like the landscape has changed so much. So it's very important to me is like Pulse had just happened, like how do we connect to our history around that? And so I wanted to give people the opportunity, if they want to really just sit face to face with Karen and like you have this direct address opportunity, but I wanted to also make it a little more whimsical and magical and kind of immersive in a different way. And so we're working, the concept we're working with this really cool illustrator, Robin Jordan, to basically illustrate parts, the key points of her story during this era and to bring them to life through like almost like a graphic novel that's unfolding around you, that you're not only witnessing sort of being drawn around you, but then at one point you're like in it. That's something I can't do in film, right? So like designing it's like user experience, essentially. You gotta think about like, okay, and thinking in that idea of branching, which starts to get a little complex, it's like I want to give the opportunity or the choice for someone to have an engaging experience. If they choose to only look at Karen, I think that's impactful in a different way than if they choose to sort of experience the rest of and explore the rest of the space. And I want them to have an engaging experience for a different reason than that. So maybe it's part of this design of like trying to hit different emotional notes by using the space in ways that feel, I don't know, that's it.
I think you can get closer to a story when the storyteller doesn't have the ability to cut away from certain things. Because people can just stare at somebody for the entire time, and that can be their experience. And that needs to be a story. And so that's how you have to design it, you know?
Yeah.
And everything that exists can't just disappear, or it can, depending on what it is. But people just have the power to look at whatever they want.
Yeah.
And it seems at first as though that's taking power away from the creator. that's literally the opposite.
More power, yeah, absolutely. I made the entire world. Totally.
And then, you know, like, it can be limiting, but only if you choose to allow it to be. Yeah.
So I'm going to say, because I have a last question too, but let's take one more, and then we're going to do a quick lightning round.
Ooh. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hiding behind trees while you're filming.
Yeah.
I mean, exterior, interior, plus traditional film reel break. You find yourself meeting persons if you know them, and then repositioning based on your preview. Like, how are you working with that?
It really depends on the project. So, you know, for example, we shot a thriller that took place at night. So for that, Joe built a specialty rig with low light cameras. Like, we didn't order it. Like, this was just, we built it, we rented the cameras, built something that didn't exist because we needed something that worked in low light situations. We specifically planned our shoot to take place during a full moon in the summer. So we would have the key light of the moon. And we also used car headlights as our other lights. And then we had two scenes where we also put in an actual, you know, light on the stand, you know, on the stand, which then we comped out in post.
The car light's part of the story.
The car lights are part of the story, yeah. So it's like there's cars that are pulled over, and so that's where the illumination comes from. So sometimes, you know, if you're, and then of course with like Little Potato, we're shooting everything with regular cameras, so we can hide all the lights because we're only looking at this when we're facing 360. We did, He's Slipped and Something in Tjirongo, we just made all of the lights practical. So, you know, a gaffer came in, you know, we had a skylight, which we put like our own light through, and then we, you know, softened that, and so with that, we didn't take out any lights, but we made sure everything was practical. So it just really depends on what the project is. Like, if it's, you know, if we're shooting in a club where, like, oh, this is a club, like, you can see the lights because you're there and the person needs to see the lights. That makes sense. If you're in a place where it wouldn't make sense to see cinematic lighting, then you have to either take it out in post or, you know, make them practical or do what you need to do. It just really depends. But it all depends on, it goes back to the story design, the user experience, and what sort of story are you designing? What is the world you're designing? Can this have lights in it? Should it have light? And where should there be light? That's whatever, don't make that stuff. But like, where is the lighting coming from and why?
Mm-hmm. Okay, one.
Well, I have a short question. One of the limits, like, we have, I mean, new people, and the other one is like sort of ethics about, like, are there certain things that can't get people to come here, or are there certain ways or rules that you're learning? And the other one is about music, but I think like, developing, I do one project with this music program, and stuff like that, but I know you can't do all those questions. And it's really kind of invested in how long something you watch the story.
Yeah, but like, well, so if you're streaming content, right now, like, that's where we hopefully Pixvana and Steam are going to fix all this by the end of summer because things are moving rapidly. But right now, like, you can stream a 360 video on YouTube, and it's really, because of the bandwidth, you know, it's going to be like 3 to 5 minutes, maybe. On the human body, I mean, I think that's changing. The better the content, the more high fidelity the content. I mean, I've heard, and depending on what you're doing, like, one of the things I've heard recently, and that is stumping neurologists, neuroscientists, is like this, you know, somebody is in a Google Tilt Brush, which is this like really cool drawing. I love it. I'm obsessed. They're in there for 12 hours, and their experience, they thought they had only been in it for like 2 or 3 hours because they were so immersed. They didn't have to go to the bathroom. They needed to eat. They didn't need to do anything. They're like in it to win it. But with like watching certain content, I think, especially when it's more cinematic and 360 video and mobile delivery, and I feel like we're at like 5-minute limitations right now. 5 to 10 minutes is what I've experienced.
Yeah, most pieces are not longer than 10 minutes, and I think you're going to see a lot more serialized content because for people who are more comfortable and have more experience watching it, they can watch the next episode if they're feeling it. Also, as headsets get better and better, like headsets are already much less cumbersome than they were. They're going to be much less cumbersome in a year and in 2 years. Like it's always going to get better. So, and our eyes are good too. Like we're going to get used to having screens. So we're already so used to this, but I'm used to this. But yeah, truly right now, since so much content is mobile, like the Vive, for example, that's with a tilt brush, like that's connected to the computer, so you're able to do it for a long time. Your phone will overheat and stop, and in some cases explode at a certain point if you go on for too long. So right now, most experiences are under 10 minutes, and then sometimes, I've had the experience where I just watch content after content after content, and my phone is like, shutting down now. It's like, okay, well, there's that. My phone really can't take it any longer.
But it does get better. I mean, the more you do it, the more you like, I don't know.
And the better the screen's
getting.
Yeah, it's all getting better.
I think none of that is solidified.
And it also depends, like if you're in a very shaky, like watching the Blair Witch in 360, the way they shot the Blair Witch project, that was just 360, like I probably couldn't do that for an hour and a half. Like that shakiness would, even though I watched a lot of VR, that would disturb me to the point where I probably could watch the whole thing in one sitting. But it's something much more smooth I could.
So, if people want to keep engaged with this conversation, what are the local resources that you would point them to stay engaged?
Local resources to stay engaged.
Or, by the way, you mentioned a podcast earlier.
Yeah.
You're like, but locally as well. And so, how do you stay engaged with this conversation in a meaningful way?
I listen to Voices of VR religiously. Lots of great conversations happening there that are across disciplines again. So if you're interested in just like the tech or the business aspect or how it's used for education or health, it's great. It runs the gamut. A lot of good thought leadership happening in those conversations. There's a Road to VR is a newsletter I subscribe to, so I just kind of get the content. Flipboard, I have keywords coming up for it. And then I just, with that, I like, I should go watch this thing. And a lot of stuff is available to just watch because really the only way that this is going to be a thing is if it becomes adopted by a lot of people. And so there's a lot of investment in providing people the opportunity to even experience it. Just, again, that's why Google Cardboard is so cool because it's a really accessible way to sort of dive into this space.
Yeah, you don't have a cardboard yet, order one. You can for the cheapest set of dollars, it's more like 15. And then through that, there's lots of free apps to download and watch. Like on YouTube, you can just look up 360, and you can watch 360 on your phone like this without a headset. But you want to get in the cardboard, hit the cardboard icon, so it's put it in the UI, then put it in there, and then watch that. Within, which did the invasion that we talked about, Chris Mills tried to talk, which I talked about, that guy's company, they have a really great app, a lot of really amazing content, including Positive or Sidra. New York Times VR, NYT VR, they release one new 360 documentary a day. Been doing that for a year. So there's a lot of amazing 360
Riot.
Watch. Riot, also a lot of really great stuff. And then in terms of more local, there's a Facebook group, Seattle ARVR, local, and then that's next to the meetup group. There's a very active meetup group. I'm forgetting like the official name of the virtual world site.
There's definitely there's a lot of different VR meetup groups. There's one in particular though that's like run by women and super inclusive. And it's not like dudes can't come, but it's more like, hey, if you're gonna be in the space, like, here are the ground rules. It's really rad.
And that's the one that Yvette on. That's the same folks who are in the Seattle ARVR.
And the virtual world society.
Yeah. And then locally, Diana and Booty, who have a chair, they have 6R, which, so the regular Seattle ARVR meetup, they host hackathons, which is for whatever kind of VR you want to do, and 6R specifically does cinematic VR challenges. So you can come out and play, and in 48 hours,
Make up different tools every time. So if we call it cinematic VR challenge, but we now are also working with we are working with motion capture. We're adding new layers and new stories to there every time.
So where can they go to sign up for Pixar info?
Go to our Pixar Facebook page or our PixarFestival.com. But I was also going to tell everybody that I will make a list of every single resource that has been mentioned and post that on the Women in Filmmaking page, the festival page, and our community page. And even make it a personal email, so make sure it lasts everywhere and that you won't be able to miss it. And if there's something that you are thinking of that should be on the list and it isn't, please feel free to send it to us and we'll add it.
And just to say, like, the technology piece of it can feel pretty daunting at times, but literally, you know, how my company started when it was like, hey, this looks cool, we should try this. There was not, I mean, there is actually now, like, Cronus Academy will, like, teach you VR classes. We learned everything by watching YouTube tutorials. That is how we made our first feature, or first short film, was we watched YouTube tutorials, and we went out the camera and we shot a bunch of stuff and we figured it out. So if you are in this room, you also can do that. We all can access YouTube.
Totally.
Between YouTube and, like, going and connecting and with other people trying to do it, too, that's all we need.
The cameras are actually the cameras are actually getting cheaper and cheaper. If you got like $300, or sometimes even less.
I think even
You can buy this one for $150.
$150. Yeah.
Like, just walk around, go ahead and try it. It does not hurt, and it's actually really fun. And you get to like mess with your friends, and you're like, oh, it's a really great opportunity. And then you can connect with other people. There are apps you can download that you can upload your footage to, and then look at other people's stuff and kind of get ideas like that. It's like very run and gun if you'd like it to be. It's an accessible place for everybody. It's not just like you have to have a certain amount of money, which in the higher up version, like the fancier versions of VR, is the case. But this stuff it's like if you have a smartphone, you're good.
Yeah, and I would also say sign up for the City of Seattle newsletter and the Men's newsletter and Washington Filmworks newsletter. Because these guys are constantly promoting when VR pop-ups, like the City of Seattle hosted, where we took a bunch of those promotion folks, went out to Holly Park and showed residents there and did some panels as well, and people could just come experience VR. And these groups, they're working on that too. So, like, you know, Seattle's you are in the right place to start talking about that. Seattle's a VR hotbed. So
the key word is play.
Play.
Like, get in a mind frame of playing and not being worried about how silly it is. Yeah.
Everyone was silly. Had that on.
They were freaking out.
Nobody was silly. So
Yeah.
it's a great equalizer.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Oh.
I would like to add Seattle's VR site. That is awesome. SeattleVR.us, I think it is.
Oh, cool.
You can get directed from Seattle VR group. There's like a description about the rules and stuff, and there is a website. It's awesome because there is also a calendar. I don't know who updates it, but it's just awesome. Thank you.
Cool. I'm gonna check that out.
Virginia, did you have something you wanted to share?
I had a lot to say, but it's gone past.
Oh, okay.
No, but you know, like one thing I do want to say is that, you know, we as filmmakers, filmmaking has been around for so long. With VR, I mean, we are on the ground floor of this. I mean, you know, like, just do it. Anybody could do this at this point because it's the beginnings of it. And how rare is that for any filmmaker to be at the beginning of something, a new technology, a new way of looking at telling a story, you know? And what I was going to say before was, like, I can see it for a narrative and I can see it for a documentary more at this point because as a documentary filmmaker, you know, it's like it's where I'm pointing the camera. It's where, you are not really, you're really as a documentary filmmaker telling the story. But it would be great to be able to have anybody else, you know, see what you're seeing. You know, and I see it harder as being a narrative filmmaker is a lot of work, because you are creating the story. You're creating all of those images that anybody can look at. So there's a huge work out there for that.
Mm-hmm. I think something that was a little distressing that occurred with me giving my 4-year-old nephew a cardboard was that I didn't really need to explain to him for a long period of time what was going on. He was just like, okay, cool. And then he just went off and did that on his own, and that is the next generation. So like, all these really philosophical discussions that we have as people who are just like, oh, this is happening now, they don't have to do that. And so we're going to be creating this technology that they're watching, and it's exciting and a little terrifying.
And they will be this.
Yeah, we will become obsolete very quickly.
Yeah, some 6-year-old's going to start making VR films next year. We're all done.
Like 90%
Yeah.
of tutorials we watch are like 14-year-old kids.
There you go, for real.
Anyways,
It's humbling and amazing.
So I do kind of want to pause here, thank the ladies, and then we can stick around for a little bit to have individual conversations. But thank you, ladies, and thank you.
I need to thank our providers of our demos. Thank you so much, Larry James of We Are Making Demos. Super big thanks to Kevin Wiley of Rabbit Feathers Media for helping us. So make sure that link is there. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
That's a terrible chair.
Terrible chair. I was literally on the edge of my feet.